Hey, what's up? This is Frank Mandolini of the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. Thank you for checking this video and make sure to leave a thumbs up below. And in the description, you will find the link to follow me on all social media and on Spotify and Apple Podcast, which conveniently is the place where you should leave a 5-star review to help other people get into this wonderful podcast named Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. Thank you so much. Enjoy the video. James Lawrence, creator of the Legend of La Mariposa, is here with us today at the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. James, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me, man. I'm doing really well. We just got through a spell of really bad weather here in the UK for about 4 weeks, and it finally feels like summer, so I'm feeling good, dude. Got my shorts and everything.
It was something like that even here in Italy, you know, since basically since things started to reopen, but just open air, it started pouring rain everywhere.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's just trying to keep us inside for just a little bit longer.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how that felt. Okay, but we're not here to do the meteo forecast, the weather forecast, or probably one day we will. I don't know. But we're here to talk about your work and your Kickstarter campaign about the La Mariposa. Introduce it yourself because you will do a much better job than I do.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So the Legend of La Mariposa is an all ages Lucha Libre fantasy series. It's a comic with wrestling in it, but you don't have to be a huge wrestling fan to be into it. There's plenty there for wrestling fans. There's plenty there for non-wrestling fans. It was essentially my attempt to kind of work all these sort of the mythic cultural aspects of wrestling in general, but Lucha Libre in particular, and sort of turn it into a really fun fantasy series. So it's really inspired by European Franco-Belgian adventure comics. Interestingly, a lot of my kind of early influence, I was thinking about this recently for the series, actually derived from a few years that I spent in Italy when I was very small.
Really?
Which is kind of
whereabouts?
Yeah. I lived in Trieste for a few years when I was very, very little. But
wonderful place.
Some of the first cartoons I watched were there, and they were stuff like Tiger Mask. You guys know him as L'Uomo Tigre. I'm sorry for the pronunciation.
Tiger Man. Yeah, that's translated.
Tiger Man. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the kind of the Topolino and Paparino kind of big digest books. Those were huge to me. So it's kind of like I've been sort of thinking about my influences recently, and I realized, oh damn, a lot of them actually derive from Italy. Knights of the Zodiac was like a less connected one, but definitely kind of a force as well.
You just listed a lot of my favorites, you know what's fun? You said Topolino, which probably our English-speaking audience wouldn't know who we are talking about. It's Mickey Mouse. Italy is the only place where we have another name for Mickey Mouse. We with Topolino, which is it used to be two separate words, Topo and Lino. Lino is the name, Topo means mouse. And because it was like to circumvent the censorship during the fascism. So they couldn't use the name Mickey Mouse because it was American. So they created
that's fascinating.
They created their own version called Topolino, which
cool.
Which was basically a ripoff. But it was such a cool ripoff that Disney, many years later, Disney decided to let Italy keep publishing that. Those are original stories from born from a ripoff, and that's
absolutely fascinating. I really like kind of comic book history and how it plays into kind of global history. And like I always think it's really interesting because I'm in the UK. and we've got our own comics tradition, but that's in a lot of ways is kind of been overtaken by America. And sort of the manga explosion that we had in the early 2000s. But I understand that like Italy was importing manga on like a massive scale before it ever made it anywhere else in the world, I think.
Yeah.
Which is something I was really interested to learn while I was kind of like doing a bit of kind of research. But I always find it really fascinating because like I always wondered how come the American comics didn't kind of get the foothold in Europe, and a lot of it has to do with post-war, you know, cultural preservation laws in France, and as you've just kind of explained, the fascism in Italy and everything like that. So that's always super interesting to learn about stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's created a own kind of art, not just for comic books. Of course, that applies to music and a lot of other stuff. That's fascinating. That's fascinating. But
Yeah, it's cool.
sorry to interrupt you. You were saying that you had this influence from the Franco-Belgian comic books and Italian as well. So sorry.
Yeah. So no, that's cool, man. That was, I mean, for me, that was a really interesting side little digression. So I hope the listeners liked it too. Yeah. So stuff like Tiger Mask is a big one. It's a huge one. I'm actually working on a La Mariposa graphic novel that will be, done in the future. That's a big sort of homage to Tiger Mask, and it's really just about taking pro wrestling and lucha libre and sort of extending it to, the kind of stories that they want us to believe in the ring. So, stuff like the Santo movies of the 60s, where it's like, yes, there is wrestling and there are wrestling matches, but also they will fight aliens and demons and, dark wizards and stuff like that. So, that was kind of the plan, because like a lot of wrestling comics that I really enjoy focus heavily on the industry, but for me the appeal has always been the story and like the pageantry, and that was what that's what I'm trying to go for with La Mariposa, is to try and get my favorite bits of wrestling into like one big comic series.
Well, that's a very ambitious project, and you said you have a Kickstarter campaign, which actually literally just started.
Yeah, by the time this is released, it will be underway. It's going to be for the second Legend of La Mariposa book. It's called The Legend of La Mariposa: The Climb and Other Stories. The next one's going to have a shorter title. And it's what it is. It's kind of a companion volume to the first book, The Demon Gauntlet, which collects a lot of kind of shorter stories that I did while I was working on the webcomic. They do reference events in the Demon Gauntlet, but it's designed to sort of stand alone, because I never want anyone to feel like they have to pick up volume 1 to pick up volume 2. The idea has always been kind of similar to like Asterix, which is another major influence of mine, that you can pick up any Asterix book and get a complete story. That's what I want for the Legend of La Mariposa. So this is really nice as kind of a sampler of a few different adventures. Some, the stories, I think the longest story is maybe about 30 pages. The shortest one is 1 page. So it's really kind of like a little sort of mini anthology of La Mariposa's adventures. And that's going to be funding all through June. It'll be ending, I think, on the 1st of July. We're trying to raise £4,000. I have no idea what that is in euros. Maybe like 5,000 euros. I don't know. I I've got no idea.
I think roughly probably 5,000.
Yeah. It'll be around that. It's going to be a nice little book. It's kind of going to be, it's about 124 pages. And there's also going to be all the usual array of bonus stuff, some stickers, some really cool vinyl stickers with like holographic effects, because I'm a 90s kid.
So I am too, so I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. An enamel pin, because being an independent cartoonist, you have to have at least one enamel pin as part of your merchandise. There's going to be some screen printed patches, which are the latest in a series that I've been doing. Everyone gets 2 because they're tag team patches.
Oh, so cool.
And those are really sick. So you get one, and then you give one to your tag partner, whoever they may be, your tag partner in life or in work or like whatever. And that's a really cool design because it's the Predator clasp, with Arnie and Carl Weathers, where they clasp hands and the biceps like blow out kind of thing. That's gonna be really cool. Really simple, black and white, kind of got a bit of a punk rock energy to it.
Yeah.
And also, people have the option to order a copy of the Demon Gauntlets as an add-on. So if you want to get the full all the La Mariposa that there is so far, you can just get that add-on. And of course, obviously, because international shipping costs a lot. I'm right there with everyone because I back a lot of Kickstarters as well. There are digital options available for people who don't want to pay out that kind of cash for shipping. Although, to be fair, to Europe, it's not that bad at the moment. It's mainly the US people that are feeling the bite.
Oh yeah. I know that every time I want to ship something to some friends in the US, that's terrible. that's
rough,
terrible
man.
fees. Yeah. But in your background, I'm seeing a couple of Lucha masks, one of which is Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
And is there like any element from the real wrestling world inside of the Legend of La Mariposa? Someone we could recognize?
I've largely kept it to like my own creations. Insofar as kind of like there's stuff like, because the thing is with Lucha Libre in particular, a lot of times the identity of the wrestler is owned by the promotion that they work for.
Oh yeah.
Which so there are independent wrestlers who obviously own their identity and they own their gimmick. But like I mainly kept to myself because I want it to be its own kind of like self-contained world that doesn't the Legend of La Mariposa is not set on our world. So it would be really cool because like there are a couple of professional wrestlers that I'm quite friendly with. That would be really cool to do like a crossover with someday. But at the moment I'm kind of just keeping it to like my own characters because that's what I have fun doing.
yeah, that's okay. And about the mask that you have there, one is Rey Mysterio. Who's the other one? I don't recognize it.
Oh yeah, there's a few. So what have we got? We got at the top we have Dasher Hatfield, who is he's no longer wrestling under that name. He was kind of this Captain America figure in this independent promotion in the States called Chikara, which is now sadly defunct.
Yes.
I have no idea who that one is. That's the very first one I ever bought. I bought it at a festival.
That's the mystery. Oh.
Yeah, that's a mystery one. It's got like a little sun on the forehead. I thought it might have been Rey Mysterio's original identity of Colibri, but I don't know if it is for sure. At the bottom, we have another Chikara wrestler called El Hijo del Ice Cream, who is literally what he sounds like. He's one half of a tag team of ice cream themed wrestlers. And I don't know if you'll be able to see him on camera. At the bottom, we've got Pentagon Junior. That's or a Penta L0M, as he's known nowadays. Who's just like one of my favorite like luchadors doing it at the moment. And I left out El Santo because obviously.
Yeah, because of obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, one cool thing that you can't really see, I'll just show you up there. The very talented Ted Hobgood of Omega Masks actually made a La Mariposa custom mask for me.
Whoa,
as a surprise, which was really cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You should have it on your Kickstarter. One of the tiers should be like.
I have thought I desperately want to do that. It would be like kind of a one-off high-end tier. It's just the logistics of it because Ted's based it. Ted's the only dude that I would trust to do. Like I would like want to do a mask for me, but he lives in the States, so there's like logistics and tax things. So,
Yeah,
it'd be
of
cool to
course.
work it out, but who knows?
Of course,
It
of
is kind of
course.
cool though, because like there have been like 3 masks produced of La Mariposa characters as part of this thing called Mask Making March.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen. It's a hashtag on Twitter. It's like for people who like to make masks,
Yeah.
make wrestling gear, and they take on like short projects. So a couple of people have produced La Mariposa masks based on the Demon Gauntlet, which is just like I'm just absolutely staggered when they come up, because I can't think of like a better
Oh
kind of
yeah.
like treat.
Oh yeah, mind blowing, mind blowing. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
man.
great. That's great. And what about your other works before this Mariposa series? Is there something that we could look out for?
The Legend of La Mariposa has been my kind of thing since like 2014.
Uh-huh.
So it makes up kind of the body of my work. I had a
Okay.
very brief 3-issue series that I put together called Dangerine, which was kind of a Kamen Rider tokusatsu,
Okay.
Power Rangers kind of style
Yeah.
parody. But I kind of stopped doing that because I was having the idea for La Mariposa. Did that at the time. I've also done some stuff for a webcomic here in the UK called Afterlife Inc.
Mm-hmm.
I did a run. I did like a run of pages for them, like in 2019. That was like super fun. And then various kind of anthologies. Like last year, myself and a bunch of friends, we put together a horror anthology called Knife Point Horror, which is based on a horror anthology podcast,
Yeah.
which is absolutely fantastic. And that was like a lot of fun. I got to kind of like do stuff that like I don't normally do. But to be honest, in terms of comics, La Mariposa is kind of like has been my main thrust for like years. It's kind of the series that I'm most interested in doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that's kind of because a lot of my influences, like I don't know if you can see behind me, but I have like a load of Usagi Yojimbo books
Mm-hmm.
on my shelf, and like I let also love stuff like Hellboy. So my all of my kind of comic book heroes have always been people who've been like, this is the concept that I have. I want to build this world and just go as far as I can with it before I like either sort of burn out or kind of like die.
Yeah.
So La Mariposa is kind of as always is the main focus for me.
Oh yeah, yeah. I can see why. I can see why you say that. Lately, we have seen so many wrestlers like take pages from the comic books. In my opinion, one glowing example is Danhausen, who's built like a cult following, being like this sort of Dracula-esque kind of character, which like steams out of a comic book. Or one of those like golden era Hollywood posters, this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And is there like any particular wrestler which you will want to work with your art?
Oh gosh. I mean, do you mean in terms of like a collaboration, or in terms of like a
Yes,
license thing?
yes, or simply someone that you think that could really translate well in comic
Oh,
book forms.
sure. Well, I mean, I mentioned the wrestler, the wrestler Green Ant, who
Hmm.
used to wrestle from Chikara. He very kindly provided a pull quote for the back of the Demon Gauntlet, and he's such a solid dude. I think I could do like a really fun story. It would be great if someone would just let me say like, here is my wrestling persona.
Yeah.
Um, could they be in the La Mariposa universe? And like we'll just do a story based on that. So like I have one in mind. I have a story in mind for like Green Ant, but like in terms of that, just like give me either give me the classics
Hmm.
like Santo or Blue Demon. Obviously, Tiger Mask is right up there. Um, it would be cool to do a La Parka
Hmm.
comic. It would be amazing to do like I mean, did you ever watch Lucha Underground when that
Yes,
was on?
yeah, yeah. The first, I
That
love
was
loved the first season and pretty much liked the second one as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, give me any of them. Like, I mean, honestly, the dream would be to kind of get like kind of a crossover thing going. Again, I keep coming back on this, but like, you know how like Tiger Mask was a manga that then became a real life wrestler that then kind of
Yes.
fed the manga, and to get that kind of loop going,
Yeah.
that would be like amazing. So like if someone came up and was just like, hey, listen, you know, I'm kind of starting out, could I be the real life La Mariposa? And we could kind of go back and forth. That would be like so cool.
Whoa.
Um,
Yeah, of
that
course.
that would be like the dream. But yeah, you know, and I have actually done like collaborations kind of with wrestlers before. Like
Hmm.
there's this company based, I believe, in Sweden
Hmm.
called See It Live Wrestling. And like I produced like a little comic for them in collaboration with kind of one of their wrestlers, who's this dude called Marcus of Man,
Oh yeah.
who's from the Isle of Man, where I come from. Um,
Okay.
which, you know, and that was a lot of fun as well, because I got to kind of like, I wasn't really aware of kind of the Swedish wrestling scene, but there's a lot of kind of like really impressive kind of like characters and cool dudes.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
The Nordic wrestling scene is amazing. I had the chance to talk with
yeah,
a few of them. They are so passionate and so creative in what they do.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely, 100%. All the kudos to to those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who's doing it, especially if you're like not in one of the kind of the big sort of like cultural wrestling meccas.
Hmm.
Because for me, I always think US, Japan, Mexico as the three big kind of like wrestling
Yeah.
culture capitals. But then anyone who's in like, you know, Brazil, here in the UK, the UK has had like a huge like wrestling explosion in recent years. But like anyone kind of like in the Scandinavian territories or Central Europe, anyone who's just like doing it without kind of feeling like they're kind of, you know, not within sort of that big three kind of area, you know, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, good, you know, good on them. And like that's going to be where the really groundbreaking stuff happens.
Yeah, yeah, because I feel like that they have less pressure, so they try stuff and see what works or what not, and
Yeah.
they dare more than probably anyone can do in the U.S. or Japan or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, in many ways, it's kind of like, because the thing is, you were mentioning sort of wrestlers using a lot of comic stuff. I think there's like a lot of crossover with
Hmm.
indie comics and indie wrestling. I mean, obviously, maybe the fitness levels are a little bit different, but like,
Yeah.
um, you know, you're kind of doing this thing, and you've got to do it because you love it so much,
Hmm.
that you don't want to do anything else, and you don't have this kind of like editorial oversight, so you could just really go off, and like you're really limited by, you know, like actual physical possibility and your imagination, you know, and I guess your budget. But
Yeah.
like it's kind of it's really exciting, because that's where, again, that's where the innovation comes in, is when you don't have that kind of like, oh well, we've got to keep the shareholders happy, or oh, we can't, like, you know, we can't spook our audience too much. You know, you have the freedom to sort of really break new ground in kind of those independent territories.
Yeah, yeah. And before you mentioned Lucha Underground, I think that, in my opinion, that was probably the only example in recent memory of something truly different coming from North America, and probably NWA Power as well, but Power is more of a throwback in my opinion, so that's why it's different. Lucha Underground was different, full stop, because it was something that
Yeah.
we'd never seen before, really, and was kind of the blueprint for all the cinematic wrestling that we see nowadays during the pandemic. Uh,
Yeah.
do you think uh, that makes any sense at all, or?
No, I 100% agree. Like, it was weird because like I was working on the Demon Gauntlet when Lucha Underground first started. And I was like, oh, this is what I want wrestling to be, you know? because I'd been making kind of wrestling because I was big into wrestling as a kid in the 90s during the days. It's just like, oh, this guy is like a zombie Undertaker, and his soul's in a big urn, and like all that kind of stuff, and like, oh, this guy's a policeman, but he's also like a wrestler, and this guy is a tax inspector, but he's also a wrestler, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All these larger than life characters, and then that kind of started to go downhill a bit. I mean, there was still great wrestling going on, but sort of the imagination, it started to kind of go more towards sort of representing reality, which I now know kind of American wrestling has always been about, in terms of kind of like representing, relatable class-based struggle characters kind of thing, as opposed to sort of the more operatic theater of like, lucha libre. But then I kind of came back into it, a couple of years before Lucha Underground came out, because I sort of ducked back into wrestling, and I saw like Bray Wyatt appear in his like swamp cult leader thing. I was just like, oh, I guess I'll check out some wrestling. I'm kind of like getting back into it. A lot of people I know are talking about it. Like Chikara was like, I was hugely into Chikara when it was going. So I thought I'd dip back into kind of the big uns. And I was just like, oh, this dude is like a creepy cult leader now. And he's got like some, like there's lore now. There's like all this kind of like story behind it. I was like, oh, okay, I can get back into this. And then Lucha Underground happened, and it was like, that was it for me. So it's just like, oh, this is what I would do if I had like loads of money and I was going to make a wrestling show. Just like lean into it. It's like, this guy who's themed like a dragon, he is an actual dragon.
Yeah.
He's an actual dragon, and he will turn into a dragon in a cutscene and fly away and breathe fire. Oh, by the way, he's also really into nunchucks, and his best friend is a time traveler. You just have to accept it.
Yeah.
That's what I want. And that's kind of like, that kind of fed into, that kind of confirmed what I was doing with La Mariposa, which is just like, yeah, I'm not crazy. This does make sense. Like the idea of kind of the mask as being the seat of like power for a person. And like the fact that you kind of make yourself anonymous so other people can kind of project their desires onto you, and then you can use that to power yourself up. That's kind of was the core alchemy of La Mariposa. And you see it like literalized in another property. You see other people having the same idea as you, and it feels legitimizing in a way.
Yeah.
Like other people kind of like, you're on that wavelength.
Yeah. It legitimizes you and pumps your blood, and you're willing to go and do some extra work to make it work, and to pursue your target for the moment. Let's remind the people once again, where can we find your Kickstarter campaign? Well, on Kickstarter, but how is that called? And what should they type on the search bar?
Yeah, so you can search for The Legend of La Mariposa, The Climb and Other Stories. But to be honest, if you type in The Legend of La Mariposa, you should be able to find it pretty easily. So you can also follow me on @KingFridayJoe on Twitter. That's the royal title, the day, and the name. King Friday Joe, and that's where I will not be shutting up about this campaign for like the next 30 days. So trust me, if you can find me, you'll find the campaign. And also just drop The Legend of La Mariposa into Google, because it's like I think we take up the top 3 pages of Google now.
Yeah, that's great. That's what every SEO creator wants to hear. The top 3 pages.
Yeah, it's trying to get past those top 3 pages. Once you get past the 3 pages, you start to get like a lot of what look like very nice hotels in Mexico. Because obviously Mariposa is butterfly in Spanish, so it's just not only does it roll off the tongue well, but it also just lends itself to all manner of kind of like nice imagery. So
Yeah, exactly. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with a very difficult question I recently started to ask, and I will ask it forever to every guest I have, which is wrestling a sport?
I think of wrestling as theater. So I think of it as a play. There's a fella called Aubrey Citizen who did the comic book history of pro wrestling, who's like a bit of a hero of mine, and he referred to it as male burlesque, although obviously, you know, a lot of women wrestlers, because it's performative machismo in the way that like burlesque is performative kind of femininity. So that's the way I think about it. So I don't think of it as a sport, because I always think of a sport as being something where there is a strong element of chance in the outcome, and where it also has kind of historical origins in martial activity. Now, obviously, wrestling is a sport, yeah, because it's been a thing since like ancient Greece and even before that, right? But pro wrestling, as we understand it, you know, tights and fights, is I think of it as theater. So I hope that's a good enough answer for your question.
Oh, that's good, because it has to be your answer. So as long as it is yours, it's good for me. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, James, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Love to talk some lucha libre with you.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is there like any lucha libre performer that you are inspired by, someone currently active or not?
Oh gosh, man. There's so many. Like, I mean, I've name checked Green Ant already, who is someone who, you know, is a supporter of the series, but also is just bonkers talented in terms of like how good of a high flyer he is.
Yeah.
You know, once he kind of like, you know, once kind of like things become a little bit easier, that dude's just gonna like hit the stratosphere. You know, I already said like I'm massively inspired by like you know, Tiger Mask. There's a Joshi, a female Japanese wrestler who I like a lot, called Starlight Kid. Who is, you know, bonkers talented. I you know, for La Mariposa, I watch a lot of Joshi wrestling just because like the, you know, the small women that hit so hard and like the agility and the power that I see when I watch like a Stardom match is like mind blowing. Yeah, so there's a lot of kind of like you know, luchadors out there that I'm really excited about.
Okay, perfect. So sorry for the tricky question left at the very end. James, thank you so much. This has been great chat. People, I want to remind again, let's check the Legend of La Mariposa and follow James Lawrence on Twitter to get notified wherever you can find the Kickstarter campaign. James, thank you so much for coming. Ciao.
Thank you very much, man. Thanks for having me. Ciao.